February 26, 1944. 09:31 hours. Over the Braunschweig marshalling yards. Steam hangs in white ropes above switch points. Whistles scream. A yardmaster waves frantically, tiny as an ant from 12,000 feet. 8 olive-drab P-47D Thunderbolts of the 56th Fighter Group angle their noses down in a shallow line abreast, drop tanks tumbling away like tin toys. The Pratt & Whitney R-2800s bark and harden into a turbine shriek as the turbo superchargers spool. And the Jugs, big, blunt, and all business, pick up speed like thrown anvils finding gravity's hand. Captain Red Malloy, brown leather A11 strapped tight, oxygen mask biting his cheeks, thumbs the arming switch. 2 500-pounders squat beneath his wings, shacked to the pylons among stubby stubs where rockets will live on later missions. But today, it's bombs and 50s. His P-47 is a Razorback, the canopy's heavy frames boxing a view of Germany that is already heaving with flak puffs. The marshalling yard below is a steel forest. Ladders of track, strings of fuel tankers, boxcars shouldered together, a coal-black Pacific-type locomotive exhaling like a dragon. "Rail yard angels, this is Angel 1, he says into the throat mic. Targets locomotive and throat. Take it clean, 2 elements high cover. His wingman, Lieutenant Quinn, clicks once. No chatter, no time. The Luftwaffe has been swatted all morning by heavies and escorts. But aces still prowl. And now a wing of Fetia 190As, mottled slate and smoke, slants in from 2 o'clock high. Malloy catches them in a glance, stumpy nose, broad wings. Their cannon ports like dark eyes. Every German who ever snorted at the Jugs barn door size seems to be up there, pressing their attack while the P-47s commit downhill. "Bandits, 2 o'clock. Quinn's voice cracks. "Focke-Wulfs. Cover stays cover," Malloy says, shoving the throttle forward until the detent clicks. The big radial roars. A minute to the release point. Tracers appear first. Garden hose streams of green and white. Then the ripping thunder as 20mm and a 30mm cannon shake the thin air. High cover, 2 P-47s, roll over to meet them, and the sky blooms into shivers of metal. Malloy fights the twitch to turn. Let them sneer. Let them come. The Jug does its best work with the nose down and the railroad in the windshield. The marshalling yard rushes up. Signal gantry, coal stage, the black crown of the locomotive boiler, a glossy cylinder of a fuel wagon. Malloy's K-14 sight frames the engine smoke box. Pickle. Pickle. The bombs drop clean, the nose pops light, and he holds the dive into a flat-out strafe. 8 Browning M2s hammer in a single brazen cord, 1,000 rounds a minute each. Brass erupting over the wing, the gun smoke streaming back and spreading in oil-sweet ribbons. The locomotive's world detonates. Bombs stitch between rails, ballast geysers. The coal bunker leaps. 1 tank car bursts and rolls into a syrupy orange blossom that washes the throat of the yard in heat. As Malloy hauls, hard, past 500 MEP through compressibility's thin veil, the Jug shudders but holds. The altimeter unwinds, then steadies as he pulls into a low, ground-hugging escape. Angel 1 off south. He calls, voice steady if only because the mask grips his jaw. In his mirrors, Quinn's Jug flashes over the embankment, the wing gun still talking. High cover is a snarl of intersections and sudden silence. A P-47 rolls out trailing a dirty ribbon of smoke, but it's flying. Behind it, an FW-190 corkscrews earthward with a ribbon of flame unspooling from the cowl. Malloy feels it before he sees it. The metallic thud of hits, a trio of punches through the starboard wing. A 20mm round smacks the armor plate behind his head, a stone on a tin roof. The canopy stars white for a heartbeat. Oil freckles the plexiglass. He rides the burst, pushes a little more right rudder, and the big airframe just keeps shouldering forward. The Jugs engine note is a deep vow. "I'm still here. Take your turn at the yard, but watch the flak post near the coaling tower," he says, wiping the inside of his canopy with the back of a glove. It's a 20mm nest. From above, the Germans dive again. Disciplined, certain. For a year, they've told one another the Jug can't turn with a 109, can't climb like a 190, is too big, too blunt, too American. But the Jug's not here to dance. It's here to ruin infrastructure. It dives like a safe off a rooftop and climbs on sheer horsepower. It wears armor like a knight's harness and treats cannon hits as inconveniences. It carries a blacksmith's toolkit under the wings, bombs today, rockets tomorrow. And it will cut the Reich's arteries, one rail at a time, until the steel stops singing. Malloy banks low over a hedgerow. The yard is a griddle now, smoke pressed flat by the winter ceiling. He spots a secondary target, a line of gondolas stacked with ties, and kicks a rudder to skid the nose. Another strafing run. The Brownings chew, ties leap like jackstraws, sparks gutter along steel. He thumbs the transmit. "Angel 2, you're high. Clear the 6, he's lining you." Quinn answers with a grunt and a roll. A 190 flashes through his wake and overshoots. The German pilot incredulous at the Jug's refusal to die. A heartbeat later, the German's canopy fills with 50 caliber anger from the second element. The Focke-Wulf staggers and drops behind the freight shed, vanishing in a smear of soot and snow. "Rails cut," someone says, breathless. "Rails cut." Malloy pulls up to 3,000 feet, engine still smooth, gauges steady, armor scuffed and proud. The yard below is no longer a pattern. It's a wound. Big Week demanded exactly this: a systematic shattering of the Luftwaffe's body and the arteries that feed it. And the P-47, sneered at for its size and shape, is the blunt instrument that won't break while doing the breaking. He checks the clock. Fuel's good. Ammo, half. The mission isn't over. It's only broadening. The Reich's railways stretch in every direction, and the Jug can follow all of them. February 22nd, 1944. 10-12 hours. South of Hildesheim, the landscape tightens into hedgerows and frozen fields. Malloy's element runs the deck so low, the prop arcs scuff the tops of reeds along a drainage ditch. The P-47s are heavy-shouldered shadows crossing the snow. Cows leap in panic, a bicyclist pitches into a drift, and every farmhouse has a boy at the window with a mouth like an O, counting the thunder. Gauges solid, oil 90, temp green. Quinn calls, his voice steadier now that the flak boxes are sliding behind them. Tracks ahead, bearing 175. There they are. Twin steel threads pulled taut toward a low trestle bridge. A freight train labors east. Black loco crowned with smoke, a necklace of boxcars, and 2 cars from the head, an anti-aircraft wagon. Malloy spots the wagon's fold-down sides, the hunched figures around twin 20mm barrels. He angles wide, radio quiet, letting the locomotive come to him. He can feel the Jug gathering speed even at low altitude. The R-2800's 2-stage, 2-speed supercharger breathing like a cathedral organ behind the firewall. The armor plate under the seat and behind the headrest is a quiet reassurance pressed into steel. The Germans can sneer at the silhouette, but it was built like a safe with wings. Angel 2 dragged the flak wagon's eyes, Malloy says, and Quinn knows what that means. The wingman pops up 10 feet, waggles, and strafes wide. Bright streams of 50 tearing into the snow 50 yards off the train's flank. The German gunners swivel, instinctively yanked toward the noise and tracers. That heartbeat is all Malloy needs. He comes from the sun. The sight ring cradles the locomotive's smokebox door. He squeezes, and the Brownings reply in a braided roar. You can feel it in the bones more than hear it. 36 pounds of lead a second ripping outward. Armor-piercing incendiary, tracer, ball, a mix that sews a line of orange commas along the boiler's length. Something gives. A panel tears like tin. Steam blows sideways in a white hammer. The engineer's cab coughs sparks and vanishes into its own smoke. Car's jackknife. The flak wagon swings and fires blindly, too late. Malloy's rounds rake it, men scattering, one figure toppling into the ditch. Engines out. Bridge is next, Malloy says, hauling into the shallow river valley. The trestle is a timber lattice about as long as a football field, and it carries more war than any armored column. Coal, ammunition, bread. Cut it, and everything beyond it starves. He climbs shallow to give the bombs a clean fall. The jug feels different with its nose up, like a bull yoked to a cart. Strong, a touch sullen, but willing. Compressibility isn't nipping at his heels this pass. He's too low and too slow for that. But he still respects the speed trap that waits down in the dive, where the controls stiffen and the air itself feels like it's turned to wire. He checks the intervalometer, hears himself counting. 3, 2, 1. And the bombs drop off with 2 jolts that thump through the seat armor into his spine. Detonations walk the bridge. Left span, center pier. Timber leaps, a black triangle of structure sags and snaps. Water throws a winter-white sheet into the air. Malloy's slipstream grabs the steam and smoke and flak dust and spreads it all into a ragged flag that marks the where and when of the strike. Bridge cut, Quinn breathes. Bridge cut, a shadow crosses their cockpit canopies. The giveaway barrel-chested silhouette of an FW-190 coming through at a reckless angle. The German's pilot overshoots again, hunting a turn fight where there isn't one, and Malloy's third element pounces from above. A perfect slashing burst and gone. The 190 tumbles, crosses the train, and carves a black line into the river ice. No shoot. The war takes men like that and keeps going. The radio crackles with a new voice. Angel Flight, this is Control. Be advised. 9th Air Force reports locomotives massing along the Kassel-Fulda, repeat, Kassel-Fulda line. Rockets authorized. New loadouts at Boxted. New teeth. The word rockets hums like a secret in the cockpit. Rockets, when they first arrive on the Jugs pylons, look like blunt-nosed pencils set in staggered rows under each wing. 5-inch high-velocity aircraft rockets with warheads meant to splinter ships, crack pillboxes, or turn the skeletal geometry of a bridge into splinters. They don't shoot straight like the movies. They wander. They flex. They need to be fired close. And they reward the pilot who gets his nose right and trusts the line. The Jug can carry them because the Jug can carry almost anything and still get home with pieces missing. March 3rd, 1944. 7-18 hours. RAF Boxted. Frozen mud between dispersal bays, ground crew in wool caps squinting against sleet. Malloy leans under his wing, a glove on the smooth cylinder of a rocket before the armorers hoist it. His crew chief, Sergeant Doyle, is a man who polishes metal the way a pastor polishes a sermon. His tools as neat as prayer books, his voice always slightly hoarse from living in the prop wash. Gave you the new magneto, Doyle says. You took hits last week. Figured you're married to this bird? I'd better keep her honest. Keep her ornery, Malloy says. Honest birds don't survive over Germany. They launch into a winter sky that looks like wet tin. The briefing board said Kassel. The map pinned a red yarn along the Fulda corridor, where the Wehrmacht is trying to feed the front with coal and ammunition and gasoline that smells like delayed defeat. The 56th Fighter Group is supposed to be escort, always escort. But the war is changing faster than the chalk marks on the ops board. Today they escort until the heavies are handed off, and then they turn south for the rails. Angel Control. Supply trains reported at Rothenburg and Erfulda. Expect light flak, scattered 109s. Weather over target broken 9/10. They find the break in the cloud and drop like coins through a grate. The river bends in a black S, frozen at the edges, and the town hunches close in a medieval curl around the church spire. Tracks gleam. A locomotive wheezes into the curve, slower than a thought. Rockets first, Malloy says. Pairs, aim short. He sets the sight, feels the wing dip, and presses the thumb switch. 2 rockets whip off the rails with a savage hiss and an instant of smoke that smells sharp and metallic even inside the mask. They swim a little, hunting a line, and then they converge perfectly on the black triangle under the cab. The warhead bites, lifts, and the back half of the loco lurches up like a horse shot under the saddle. Quinn's pair strike the second car. Wooden slats and canvas jump. Men scramble away from a flak wagon that never got its sides down. The return fire now is frantic, not disciplined. Pencil-thin tracer lines, hand-cranked anger from a field cart, a burst that passes behind Malloy's tail and vanishes into the river ice without a sound. He rolls, strafe fires, brakes, rolls again. The Jug is too fast in the dive to be a stable gunnery platform for long, but he has learned the rhythm. The 3-second burst, the trigger discipline, the patience to let the sight settle and the wisdom to stop before the ground climbs, the last fatal foot. They make 3 passes, not 4. He wants 4. He wants to clean up the boxcars and tear loose the couplers and spin the wreckage into a puzzle no German can solve before nightfall. But fuel is a metronome ticking under the panel, and the long flight home is the part you can't ever cheat. He banks for the west. Quinn, steady in the mirror. Angel 1, control. Confirmed damage, locomotive destroyed, trestle cut, secondary train disabled. Returning Boxted. They climb into cloud and the war goes silent for a moment. Just a roar of engine and the small clicks of cooling metal. Malloy taps the scuffed armor behind his head without thinking. The plate feels cold through the glove, the way a friend's shoulder feels when you squeeze it before a door opens. Below, the Reich's rail map is changing color 1 thread at a time, from black steel to cold, useless silver. The Luftwaffe aces can keep their tallies and their duels and their angled attacks out of the sun. The Jug is hunting arteries, not eagles. By the time the eagles stoop, there may be nothing left for them to feed. April 11th, 1944. 15.06 hours. West of Münster. The sky is a bruise-colored lid smeared with contrails, and the air is a soup of pollen, exhaust, and cordite. Malloy's 4 ship skates along the rail line that threads a sawmill and a canal. They've traded bombs for a mixed load, rockets outboard, full gun belts inboard. And the Jugs carry the tired look of aircraft that have learned unpleasant lessons and survived them anyway. Patched panels, rivet lines that catch a stain of oil, gun gas soot licking back from the leading edges. Angel 2, your boost is wandering, Malloy says, reading Quinn's engine gauges by the small shifts in his prop RPM. Keep the throttle honest. We're not playing tag with compressibility today. They all know it now. In the dive, somewhere past 450, the controls get wooden and the Jug's nose sniffs down, and the air itself turns to braided wire around the tail. The first time it happened, a kid from B-Flight had clawed at a control column that might as well have been set in concrete while the altimeter spun like a thrown coin. He lived, flattened into the deck with the speed washing off in heavy, grunting yards. But the shape of his fingerprints is still in the rubber of his grip. Since then, they've learned the trick. Ease in, never haul. Ride the tremor, pop the nose a breath high to let the shock wander off the tail. Trust the weight of the Jug and its big square wing to give you back your hands. Tracks ahead. A low brick viaduct pulls the rails across the canal in 3 arches, a geometry class begging for explosives. A plume of smoke marks a locomotive approaching with the determination of a heartbeat. Malloy checks wind, checks the lazy pendulum drift of the sight over the middle pier, and thumbs the radio. First pass rockets, then guns. Pairs. Don't go hero on me. Quinn grunts an acknowledgement. The wingmen spread 2 fingers wider than comfortable. The viaduct swells, brick by brick, as if someone is winding it forward on a projector. Malloy's first pair leave the rails with that hungry hiss, tails flexing, and stitch into the mortar lip at the waterline. The center arch coughs brick and river in a gout that makes the bridge sag like wet cardboard. Quinn's rockets go long, catch the far abutment, and the whole right side wobbles as if surprised. Guns, Malloy says, already in the shallow bank that will give him the trestle's crown at a quartering angle. He rides the tremble, lets the sights settle, and hands the trigger 3 seconds of unrepentant 50 caliber law. Bricks spray. The viaduct's middle arch sags the last fatal inch and folds. The track bends down in a grin that has lost its teeth. Bridge cut, Quinn says, exhaling the words as if there's something he's been holding in his mouth for an hour. The celebration lasts the width of a heartbeat. High 10. Bandits 2. No, 4. It's Sergeant Lentz in Angel 3, voice high and oddly flat at the same time. The sky peels. 2 BF-109Gs punch out of sun bleach with perfect economy. Small black crosses knitted to silver wings, cannon hubs dark as knuckles. 2 FW-190As come half a beat later, almost level. A classic bracketing pincer that's put more than one escort flight into the dirt with clean German paperwork. Break into them. Don't arc, Malloy says, turning the jug with the gentleness of a man steering a mule that has never lost an argument. The first 19 flashes wide in a green piped line of tracer. And then the sky is a set of intersecting equations. Closure, deflection, roll rate, faith. The German ace leading the 190s. Red band painted at the tail, a Staffelkapitan's toothpick neat between his teeth in Malloy's imagination. Commits to Quinn. Malloy sees the calculus click. The 190 thinks the jug will try to climb and cannot. Thinks a turn fight will give him a clean shot at a big blunt target. Thinks that all the stories told in the dispersal hut about American refrigerators with wings are going to be proven again in the next 2 seconds. Quinn does not climb. He shoves the nose down and the world presses into him like a closing door. The jug steps into the dive with the eagerness of a boulder. Malloy feels the stiffness tasting the tail. The elevator pushes back like an obstinate hinge. He blips trim, carries a whisper of rudder, lets the shock slide, and the nose answers. The 190 follows, late, and suddenly its attack angle is wrong, its cannon line short. Quinn's burst rips the German's right wing root. A panel lifts. The 190 jerks high, indecisive, and Angel 4 cuts across with a scything deflection shot that finds the belly. The 190 goes knife edge, oddly formal, and then writes a dark diagonal into a wheat field. A single piece, maybe the canopy, spins off like a tossed coin. The 109s were not idle. One has chosen Malloy, and that pilot is good. Smooth closure, no theatrics, a whisper of rudder that keeps the nose just ahead of where Malloy's going rather than where he is. Cannon strobes. The jug twitches. An impact thunders through the cockpit like a sledgehammer hitting an oil drum. The quarter-inch armor behind Malloy's skull takes the round with an insulted clank. Another hit tattoos the starboard wing. Fuel gauge wobbles, holds. Taking hits, Malloy says. Conversational. Because tone carries its own gravity. Still with you. He does what jug pilots learned from men who didn't come back. He refuses to turn where the German wants. He trades altitude for control feel and raw speed for clock time. The 109 grows small in the mirror. because the P-47 is doing what the P-47 was born to do. Run downhill on horsepower and weight until the air is forced to admit defeat. At 480, maybe more, the slipstream writes the music. The tail trembles. The engine note flattens into a sheet of sound. The 109 breaks off. Can't keep the dive. Won't press into compressibility without room to recover. The ace has read the report. He knows how this story ends. He rolls away, clean and cold. Angel 3, you're streaming, Malloy says, catching the gray ribbon from Lentz's cowl. Oil pressure? 45 and falling. Lentz's voice is inside out. The edge is neat because that's how you keep the panic down. Engine's rough. Route west, Malloy says. We'll shepherd. They widen as a pair of flak wagons wake up late and scatter tracer like angry knitting needles that never quite find the weave. A farmhouse's roofline tilts as a 20 mm crew on the ridgeline discovers what a wing of Browning guns does in return. The jug that was sneered at for being a big target is suddenly a fast-moving weather front of lead, armored glass, and bad news. The smell in Malloy's cockpit is hot metal and something faintly sweet from a nicked fuel vent. The taste is rubber and tin. Lentz loses a cylinder. You can see it in the wobble. The R-2800 staggers, coughs, swallows, catches again on the rest like a boxer answering the 9th round with his chin. The temperature needle creeps. The armor plate behind the pilot's seat warms as heat that should be out. The exhaust crawls backward through the firewall. Malloy tucks in so close he can count the screws in Lentz's tail fairing. Boxted's homing needle steadies at last. Land is a quilt now, hedgerows hemming fields into neat rectangles tinged with dusk. The English coast draws itself with a pencil line. Lentz's prop is a dark disk with ragged edges of condensation. His engine is making a noise that says by all rights it should have died 5 minutes ago and has decided not to. They cross the shoreline with enough altitude to glide, if someone has to. Angel 3, you're cleared straight in, Tower says, voice crisp and clipped, as if good diction might hold the engine together. Emergency services standing by. Lentz plants it long, tires smoking, a gray streak of oil snaking down the runway like an afterthought. The jug swerves, corrects, swerves again, and then, indomitably, stubbornly, stays on its feet. He rolls to a stop in a bouquet of steam, and when the engine quits, it does so with the dignity of an old bull laying down. Malloy floats his own landing in after, light on the mains, tail dropping with a familiar thump. When he climbs out, the armor plate behind his seat shows a fresh, beautiful dent the size of a teacup. Sergeant Doyle runs a thumb over it and whistles low. They kept saying you boys were too big to miss, Doyle says, eyes on the cratered steel. Looks like you're also too big to kill. Malloy looks past the hangars toward the line of dispersals where maintenance lights turn the puddles into coins. Somewhere under those lamps, rockets and belts and bomb shackles are being counted into tomorrow. Out there, across the channel, the Reich's rails keep trying to knit themselves back together. The Jugs answer is already being loaded in crates that smell of grease and pine. May 7th, 1944. Oru 6 to 52 hours, west of Dreux, France. Dawn is a thin pearl spilling over hedgerows when Malloy's flight skates out of cloud and into a quiet valley sown with mist. Fields are stitched with poplars. A canal walks beside the rails like a companion with its hands in its pockets. Far ahead, a stone viaduct steps the track across a shallow river where the haystacks squat like sleeping animals. The briefing board had said, transportation plan in chalk that squeaked. Cut bridges, cut stations, cut yards. Make northern France a tangle before June. Angel flight, hold it low, Malloy says. We're ghosts until we aren't. Quinn shifts in tight, the Jug's broad wings almost skimming the bold yellow of a rape field. The new drop tanks have a damped slosh that you can feel through the pedals. The R-2800 hums a morning hymn behind armor that has already saved more boys than anyone bothers counting. They run the deck until the viaduct grows teeth. A steam whistle blows, a single note that sounds like surprise. The station at Marchesay is waking. A man in a cap chalks a board, a woman sweeps a platform. A child stands barefoot, mouth open at the shape of war coming out of the morning. Quinlan's voice is calm, careful. Civilians on the platform off the west end. Copy? Copy. No passes on the station, Malloy replies. We cut the bridge, and what can't roll can't kill. He climbs just enough for angle. The K-14 sight floats the center pier in its glass ring. The jug trembles as he clicks the switch from wing to center line and feels the bombs alive on the shackle. Pickle. Pickle. 2 500-pounders fall clean, black eggs tumbling, and the seconds between drop and blossom are the longest kind of prayer. The first charge kisses the river lip and throws water high. The second bites the rib of the arch, pops the keystone, and the bridge sighs into itself like a folding chair. Quinn's pair walk the rails on the far bank. Gravel and ties jump like school kids called by name. Bridge cut, Quinn says, his breath fogging the inside of his mask. Flak left bank, wagon in the orchard. The wagon's side slapped down, and as Willing's Flak 38 wakes angry, pencils of tracer slashing air. Malloy's first pass is a decoy. Wide, fast, a rake of 50 that plows dirt close enough to make the crew flinch. Angel 3 turns that flinch into an opening, and his burst saws the axle out from under the gun. Men scatter. One drops flat and doesn't move. The station master reaches for the child and drags him behind a stack of milk churns. A small gesture framed in Malloy's rear view for a single, unbearable second. Angel control. The radio cracks with English clipped square. Be advised. Reports of 109s out of Beaumont-le-Rogeau. 2 sections. You are clear to employ rockets on secondary span at Maintenon. Maintenon means the big arch over the Ruhr. The same arch that sits pretty on postcards, an elegant loop of stone with water prints under it, like lace. War doesn't care about postcards. Rockets clamped under the Jugs' wings look like improvised arguments settled with dynamite. Malloy thumbs the selector and feels the rails on the pylons wake up in his bones. 2 by 2, he says. Aim short on the spandrel. They find the river's silver S by the way the morning glints, drop to treetop height, and the town opens around them. Gardens, a church spire, washing lines like flags of surrender no one asked for. Malloy's first pair leave with that impatient hiss, tails flexing. They wander a hand's width and then settle into the brick at the arch foot as if guided by faith. The span hiccups, loses grace, and slumps. Quinn's second pair stab high and rip stone loose in a clattering avalanche that throws white dust across the water, like wedding rice scattered by the wrong congregation. Angel 2 off right, Quinn calls, and then the sun gets teeth. The 1-auto-nists arrive like punctuation, sharp, exact, not decorative. 2 from high 11, 2 from low 3, a classic scissors that wants to pull a jug into a turn it shouldn't accept. Malloy doesn't. He presses the nose and trades prettiness for physics. The air hardens around the tail. Compressibility tests the hinge like a lawyer reading a contract. He nudges trim, feathers rudder, keeps the dive a degree shallow of folly, and the jug answers like a heavy door that still, somehow, swings. The first 109 overshoots. Not by much, just enough for a stripe of 50 to comb the radiator and turn the sleek nose into a shrieking kettle. The German bails the attack clean, disciplined, an ace's hand, not a hothead's, and rolls vertical to reset. The second 109 brackets Quinn. Angel 4 crosses with a disapproving line of tracers that slap the Messerschmitt awake and away. Hold the river, not the fighters, Malloy says. He won't tell them not to shoot, he's not their mother. But the mission smells like oil and stone dust, not like tallies. They make a last gunnery pass on the span's remaining rib. The Brownings speak in the language the Jug loves, short, patient, heavy, and stone peels away into the water. The bridge is now geometry that doesn't add up. Nothing with wheels will cross it today. On egress, they get the kind of flak you remember later without deciding to. A 20 mm from a hedgerow that no one saw snaps a burst into Malloy's wing. A drumming that feels like someone beating on a washboard with a crowbar. A round punches the leading edge and ricochets inside the panel, exits lower, and leaves a shred of aluminum that flaps like a bookmark. Gauges steady. Oil green. The armor plate behind his head is warm again, and it is a comfort that borders on superstition. They run for the channel under the belly of the weather. The horizon, a bright knife. The set drifts of French FM chatter rise and fall in the headset. Farmers warning each other, a gendarme cursing, a woman absolutely certain in a trembling voice that the Americans have wings the size of barns. On the deck, a bicycle wobbles into a ditch as they pass. A girl waves a scarf. Someone throws their hat straight up and never gets it back. When they break it feet wet, Quinn says the thing they've not said out loud yet. June, like a rumor that's starting to have weight. Transports assembling, airborne chalkboards multiplying in huts like mushrooms after rain, pilots memorizing sand table hedges by the arrangement of cigarette burns. The Jug is practicing a new trick. Clipping fences on a beach you haven't seen yet, carrying bombs meant for coastal batteries that have lived on postcards too. They climb into cloud that smells of rain and cordite. The engines drone, the armor creaks, the rails behind them stop singing. Somewhere in a French depot, a timetable turns into a lie. In a chateau schoolroom pressed into a German staff office, a red pencil hovers over a map and finds no good line to draw. The aces will come again, out of the sun, out of habit, out of pride. But every day there is a little less for them to defend, and every night the bridges they didn't save sag another inch. Boxted's field shows between curtains of weather, like a stage revealed in deliberate strokes. Wheels kiss, flaps hum. The war slides off the skins in the smell of hot brakes and wet grass. Sugger's Doyle meets Malloy at the wing root, with a look that says he's already counted the holes and already has the patches cut. "You boys bring me souvenirs," he mutters, feeling the torn panel like a doctor feeling a rib. "I'll make her pretty enough to scare them again tomorrow." "Don't make her pretty," Malloy says, glancing at the fresh scuffs on the armor behind his seat. "Make her mean." June 7th, 1944. 05:41 hours. Southwest of Caen. The world is gray silk, torn where guns have spoken all night. Malloy's flight skims the hedgerows with bomb racks full. 2 500-pounders, full belts, no drop tanks. Because the distance is short now and the work is close. Yesterday the beaches took their beating and lived. Today the arteries inland must be pinched until the German divisions come up hungry and late. Angel flight control. Rail choke points priority, Molt, Mesidon, Argentin. Road columns reported on N13. Weather broken, 3/10. The voice belongs to a controller in a cramped caravan, with maps spread like tablecloths and cigarette burns marking towns. He sounds awake and intimate with urgency. They find the tracks by smell more than sight, creosote and steam, and by the way the hedgerows break to let steel run. A small station slides under the nose, its clock stopped, its glass jagged teeth. 2 locomotives hiss in a siding, black crowns glistening. Someone in a blue jacket runs, arms full of paper. Malloy keeps his pass clean. No platform runs, no machine gunning a silhouette that might be a civilian. The bridges and engines are fair game. Everything else is noise. "Train and throat," he says, and his element rolls in. The first bomb kisses the yard throat and makes a new map. Rails bow into parenthesis. Ballast climbs like geysers. A signal mast folds as delicately as a darning needle. Quinn's bomb undercuts the forward loco. The boiler lets go with a howl that turns the morning white. The shock wave thumps the Jugs' belly as if the earth has risen a foot to meet it. Bridge east of Molt. Lentz calls, 12 o'clock. Stone arches, low span. Flak blossoms from a ditch with the neatness of men who drilled it yesterday. The tracers are orange beads on a wire. The first burst misses long. The second walks in with arithmetic patience. Malloy goes oblique, lets the sight drift across the second arch's spandrel, and kicks a whisper of rudder to give the bomb the argument it needs. Pickle. It scours the arch's ribs as and leaves the bridge with a cold grin where teeth were. Quinn's pair finish the thought. Water runs gray with powdered stone. The radio coughs a new frequency. Forward air controller, call sign Rover Joe, somewhere on a Norman hill with binoculars and a line to artillery. Angel, I have armor on the N13. Grid 238. Mixed column, 12 to 15 vehicles. Speed slow, heading north. You are cleared hot. Friendlies 4 kilometers west. Road columns feel like sin and necessity. They are the lifeblood of the counterattack, and they move exposed because the rails are dying. The column resolves into pieces. A half-track with a motorcycle scout like a comma ahead. Trucks with bow-side or canvas. A FOMO heavy tractor dragging something tarped. 2 flak wagons tucked mid-pack like saw teeth. The hedgerows are high enough to make ambushes easy and escape tricky. Flak first, Malloy says. Short bursts. Don't plant yourselves. He comes from the 3/4 rear, a poor man's deflection that keeps the flak crew reaching the wrong way. The Brownings pour punctuation down the lane, dot, dash, dash, and the first wagon loses its temper in a blossom of flame. Angel 4's pass unbuttons the second wagon's crew, as if the canvas itself had pulled the men away. Trucks swerve, stumble into ditches, tilt, stay. A 20mm from somewhere unseen rattles Malloy's wing like a bucket of bolts. A hit. Gauge is steady. The armor behind his head thrums with a hot, comforting silence. He rolls, sees the source, an SKF's 10-4 light flak, gunner hunched, and gives it exactly 2 seconds of argument. The gun stops. The road learns a new rule about sunlight and smoke. Hold for thunder, Rover Joe says, voice tight with satisfaction. Guns incoming. A minute later, artillery smashes the road in clean stanzas, and the column dissolves into pieces the infantry can sort at musket distance. The Jug is not greedy. It leaves what foot soldiers can use. They bend back to rails, Argentan this time, where a tall steel truss strides a river with engineers' arrogance. Weather has broken into blue plates. Contrails hang high like chalk marks. In the mirror, 3 specks that do not glow like friends. Bandits, Quinn says, calm and inevitable. 11 high, 190s. They arrive without theatrics, the Faka wolves, fast and precise. One angles for Malloy and commits to the turn that killed Spitfires when flown by amateurs. The Jug says no. It curls down into a dive with the impatience of gravity itself. The air turns to wire around the tail again. Compressibility nips. Malloy trims, breathes, and keeps the nose 1 degree shy of stupidity. The 190 hesitates, just a breath. And in that breath, Angel 3 scissors across its path with a textbook burst that walks from spinner to canopy. The German peels off trailing a rag of black that looks like a torn flag. Another 190 sticks to Quinn. Too close. Cannon bright. Malloy noses up just enough to bleed speed into control, rolls the big wing like he's persuading a stubborn door, and gives the German a rake of tracers across the radiator ring. Coolant sprays, the 190 breaks high. The sky isn't a duel today. It is denial, a refusal to let the enemy hold a line long enough to aim. Truss ahead, Lentz says, voice returned to the work. Right span. Rockets today feel personal. Malloy steadies at 800 yards, fighting the urge to fire early and squeezes. The HVARs hunt, wobble, and then decide, punching into the lattice where the diagonal meets the cord. Steel shrieks, a voice you don't forget, and the span slumps inward like a shoulder giving up a load. Quinn's rockets take the far joint. Spalling runs like water. No train crosses this geometry until men with torches and rivets make a week's work of it. Fuel says, go home. The channel glints like an answer. Below, the bocage knits a quilt that hides infantry and ambushes, and the slow work of closing a pocket that hasn't been named yet. The Reich's timetable is a fiction now. The page has been torn out and handed to the wind. They cross the beaches. Lines of ships like cities, a harbor growing out of nothing. Bulldozers shoving Europe into a new shape. On the return, Malloy names the dents in his armor out loud, a strange litany. Caen, Molt, Argenton. And Doyle later will thump each scar with the affection of a man greeting old friends. That night, in a tent that smells of damp canvas and hot metal, a sergeant from intelligence spreads a map and draws a fat pencil line where the Germans will try to run their reserves bright and early. Cut here, he says, and taps rails that used to mean France to someone who loved trains as a boy. Malloy nods. The P-47 is a boy's sketch of an airplane. Big engine, big wing, guns all across the front. And it has grown into a tool that changes maps. Tomorrow they will wake early and make that line untrue. August 17th, 1944. Wait 23 hours. East of Argenton, the air tastes of dust and cordite, and the sun is a white coin hammered flat against a bleached sky. Malloy flies a different jug now. A D-28 bubble top with the razorback spine shaved away for a view that feels like a miracle. The turtle deck is gone, the canopy a clear dome, and it turns the world into a map he can read without lifting a shoulder. The R-2800 sounds the same, a sermon of pistons and fire behind armor that knows the shape of German steel. Angel flight, control. Falaise pocket tightening. Enemy columns attempting breakout along secondary roads north of Troon. Rail lines to Lisieux show movement. Priority, bridges and choke points, then road targets of opportunity. They skim the hedgerows at 250 feet. The bubble canopy throwing the countryside across Malloy's peripherals like a panorama. Orchards, stone farms blackened by last night's artillery. Haystacks pulled apart by men looking for nothing and finding cover instead. The roads are full of wreckage going nowhere. The rails are jagged lines that learned new grammar in June. But the Germans still move. Stubborn, professional. A column hurries along a farm lane as if speed were a spell. Horse-drawn wagons harnessed to the 20th century by flak guns. A panther's long barrel eating the foreground. Infantry trotting, packs thumping like clocks. Flak mid-column. One Zwillings, one Veerling. Quinn says, eyes good, voice flat. Rockets first, then Reich, Malloy answers. Angle shallow, don't park. He lines up at a quartering approach, the sight held a touch low, and asks his eyes to do the hardest thing they know. Wait. The HVARs want to go at 1,000 yards, at 900, at 800. He holds them to 6. Off, he says into his mask like a charm, and his thumb makes it true. The rockets leave with a hiss and a flex that is more hand than machine, wobbling, aligning, deciding. They strike the road where the Panther has to steer, where berm meets ditch, and the tank lifts its nose a ridiculous inch, then a foot, then stops with the front track off and the hull at a silly angle that means catastrophic. Quinn's pair walks straight into the Veerling's carriage. The platform jumps. One barrel spins away like a baton thrown by a bored god. They rake the survivors in 3-second prayers. 50 caliber punctuation that turns wheels into commas, men into sprawled ellipses, canvas into confetti the color of dust. The flak that remains is ragged, angry, too late. Malloy keeps his passes slantwise and cold. The jug is not nimble in the French sense. It is decisive in the American sense. A fast, heavy answer that does not linger to argue. Angel, control. Bridge north of Lisieux still standing. Trains reported last night. Expect light resistance. Luftwaffe scattered. Scattered. It sounds like a mercy. It is not. Scattered aces still shoot. They climb in a long arc that gives the R-2800 room to breathe and find the rails by the way the trees retreat from the embankment. The bridge is steel, dark lattice, rivets that catch light like fish scales. A freight pushes toward it, a locomotive that looks tired and proud at the same time. A string of flats with crates under tarps. Malloy pictures ammunition and bread and boots that won't arrive. 2 by 2, he says. First pair at the near cord, aim short. His rockets bite the joint where diagonal meets vertical. Steel gives a howl that finds the bones. Quinn's finished the thought. A neat X turned into a torn K. The locomotive brakes. A bright squeal Malloy hears through the canopy like a memory, and skids into a wreck of rails that have lost their temper. Steam throws a curtain. The bridge's truss sags, embarrassed by physics. Bandits high, 10 o'clock. Lentz barks. 2 dots, then 4, then 8, if you count shapes inside light. FW-190s again. Not green, not clumsy. Disciplined men who have survived enough to know that the first burst must count. The Jugs bubble canopy makes them honest. There is no blind quarter now, no guesswork around a turtleback spine. Malloy rolls, sees the pincer unwind, and refuses the invitation to circle. Down. Keep it shallow, he says, hearing the stiffness that lives at 480 whisper at the hinge. Compressibility has become an old adversary you respect, like an uncle who once beat you at arm wrestling and never bragged. He manages the trim with the thumb of a hand that has learned to be gentle. The nose stays 1 degree kind. The air lets him steer. The leading 190 treats Quinn like a problem to be solved. Quinn makes himself unsolvable, slides into ground effect, skates along a hedgerow so low the prop wash blows petals from a sunflower head, then bumps the nose up just enough to give his guns a horizon. The burst combs the German's left radiator, the 190 knifes through a puff of its own coolant, and leaves a white ribbon that looks like surrender. The wingman covers, a neat slashing pass that misses clean. They are good. They are not enough. Malloy pulls up into a quarter roll that shows him the world upside down, then corrects smoothly, the jug answering in that heavy, reassuring rhythm. His burst is not artistic, it is emphatic. It chews a path across a belly and into a wing root, where structure becomes decision. The 190 drops a wing and admits gravity. No shoot, no gloating. The war writes the mark and turns the page. Angel 1, oil pressure? Quinn asks, a habit from too many hits. Green, Malloy says, tapping the gauge that never lies and sometimes tells you the bad news kindly. The armor plate behind his head feels warm again through the seat webbing, a fierce little comfort. When the aces sneered at the jug, too big, too slow, too American. They did not imagine a cockpit where a pilot could take a cannon strike through the aft quarter and keep a promise to the men on the ground. They lean back toward Trun where the pocket is closing like a fist. The roads are choked with vehicles that no longer belong to anybody. Burned half-tracks, naked wheels, wagons abandoned mid-turn, horses led away without harness by soldiers who look 15 in the face and 40 in the eyes. A bridge over the dives folds under the weight of panic. Men jump, swim, or don't. Malloy won't strafe the water. He leaves it to artillery and the stubborn river. On egress, they pass a field of gliders, white ghosts in a green sea. Some upright, some tipped, all scarred with stories written the day before yesterday. A man in a smock waves. Malloy waggles and is gone, the Jugs' broad shadow cutting the grass with a quick dark line. Fuel, Quinn says, the word always last, but never least. West, Malloy agrees. The channel brightens like a smirk. The engine settles into a homeward thrum. He counts holes by feel. Small frictions, a draft near the right shin, a high note in the slipstream where a panel is new to the wind. Sergeant Doyle will run his fingers over every scar and say, uh-huh, like a doctor listening to a heartbeat that keeps choosing to beat. Back at Boxted, Doyle is waiting with a rag and a grin he can't help. Brought me another, what is this, conversation piece, he says, thumb finding a groove the size of a walnut in the armor behind Malloy's seat. You keep bringing me these, I'll start charging rent. Malloy laughs because you have to. He looks at the bubble canopy fogging as the metal cools and thinks of the bridges that learned their new grammar today. Of rails that won't sing tonight. Of aces who spent their ammunition on a dive they couldn't keep. The Jug has new teeth and old virtues, and the Reich's arteries are running out of blood. February 22nd, 1945. Oiskeks of 40 hours. Over the frost-bitten flats east of Osnabrück. A year to the day since Big Week's first bombs fell. The sky is cold glass and the sun lifts like a pale coin behind haze. Malloy's bubble-top P-47D hums at 10,000 feet, with two 500-pounders, 10 HVRs, and gun belts fat enough to settle arguments. Down on the Mittelland Canal, the ice has a sickly gray sheen. Barges sit heavy, chained bow to stern. The rails that shadow the water gleam like veins. Angel Flight Control. Clarion is go, the controller says. Clipped as a razor. All transport targets authorized. Priority. Marshalling yards, canal bridges, locomotives, and any moving columns. Expect scattered 190s and 109s. Flak moderate everywhere. Clarion means no single thunderclap. Just 1,000 hammers falling at once. Fighters, fighter bombers, mediums, even recon birds with teeth. 2 days of hitting everything that moves and the hinges it moves on. Malloy glances at Quinn in the mirror, then keys the mic. Angel copies. First hit, Pi marshalling yard. Then we walk the canal. They drop through the cold like coins. Frosted roofs slide by, their chimneys making plumes that look too delicate for war. The yard resolves. Ladders of track, a smoke-blackened roundhouse, 3 switchers idling like patient bulls. A locomotive shoulders forward with a string of flats under tarps. A man in a peaked cap waves somewhere, too small for meaning. Bombs first. Malloy eases the nose and lets the K-14 float the yard throat in its ring. Pickle. Pickle. The 500-pounders leave with 2 honest jolts. He rides the dive a breath longer into gun range, discipline tight as a fist, then gives the Brownings a clean 3 seconds. The throat comes apart like a model kicked off a desk. Switches lifted, rails bowed, a signal mast snapping in a whirl of splinters and wire. Quinn's bombs walk the roundhouse. Brick leaps. A black door yawns where a wall was. Yard cut, Quinn says. The words sound like frost breaking. They swing to the canal. The first bridge is a truss so modest you could miss it, if not for how the rails ascend to meet it. Malloy steadies at 800 yards, the rockets whining in his ears like wasps locked in a jar. Rockets in pairs. Aim short. 2 HVARs leave his wings, hunting, correcting, deciding, and then they punch into the lower chord where diagonal meets vertical. Steel complains in a voice you feel in the teeth. The span droops, then gives. A barge's master shouts something that the wind steals. His mate throws a line that never finds a cleat because the cleat isn't connected to a world anymore. Second span left. Lentz calls, already rolling. Angel 4's rockets slap the abutment. Stone coughs dust. The canal takes a new shape with a calm indifference that feels personal. Flak comes up from everywhere and nowhere at once. 2 centimeters snaps from a farm wagon tucked under trees, a disciplined sting from a veerling parked beside a sand pile. Tracers sow the air into suggestion of walls. Malloy jinks wide, rakes the wagon. Men scatter, one with his cap still on, precise even in panic. He tastes rubber and hot metal inside the mask. The armor behind his skull hums with a familiar warmth that says the jug is doing its part. Bandits high, 10 o'clock. Quinn again. 3 shapes step out of the light. Long-nosed FW-190D9s, clean and fast. The Dora that the Luftwaffe saved for the last arguments. They commit in a tidy bracket, a professional's geometry. Break into them. Don't arc, Malloy says, and keeps the dive shallow enough to leave room under his hands. Compressibility sniffs the tail at 480. He trims, breathes, slides a leaf of rudder, and the jug answers like a heavy door that still, somehow, swings. A Dora lances at Quinn and overshoots by a hand's breadth. Angel 4 scythes a burst that walks across its spine. The German keeps discipline, no wild roll, no giddy pull, just a clean break, a white ribbon of coolant marking honesty and retreat. Another Dora picks Malloy. Cannon blink, a hard metallic thud tattoos the starboard wing. The Thunderbolt shrugs like an ox under rain. He doesn't turn. He goes down a degree further, the air wiring the tail, and the Dora decides it has seen this movie and hates the ending. It peels off, black cross shrinking. Oil? Quinn asks, the ritual question. Green and boring, Malloy says. Let's keep it that way. They slide south along the canal, hitting where the map knots. Small depots, fuel dumps disguised as hayricks until the rockets teach the difference. A road overpass where a staff car tries to creep under the world. Malloy leaves it. He wants bridges, not mayors. At Minden, the rail bridge is a bigger animal, lattice and pride. They go one at a time, rockets set for pairs, and put steel where steel argues with gravity. The span decides to become modern art in 3 pieces. A locomotive brakes too late and noses down into its own steam. Angel flight control. Good effects along Mittelland. Be advised. Bielefeld Viaduct hot. Heavy flak, heavies inbound. Stay to secondaries. The voice is calm, like a surgeon ordering clamps, while the heart beats steady on the tray. They refuel at a forward strip scratched into winter ground, steel planks, mud hiding under frost, a tent mess that smells of bacon and glycol. Sergeant Doyle meets the jug with a toolbox and a grin that can be translated as, "What did you do to my airplane this time?" He runs a thumb over a new crater in the armor behind Malloy's seat and makes the good noise. "Tapped you again, huh?" he says. Steel still says no. Steel says no, Malloy echoes, sipping coffee that tastes like tin and fog. Back up. Afternoon light goes flat and harsh, turning smoke to slate sheets. Clarion's second rhythm takes them east to a web of small lines feeding Paderborn. Country stations blow their whistles not as warning, but as ritual. A child in a wool cap stands on a platform with his hands over his ears. A woman drags him down behind a crate as the jugs pass and the world turns to dust and splinters. Malloy keeps his sight off the platform, on the throat, on the bridge. The work is ugly and necessary. The rails are arteries. The arteries carry divisions. Divisions cross beaches and kill friends. You cut what you must. At dusk, a last target. A hump yard where a switcher shoves boxcars up a gentle hill to roll them into new strings. It looks like piecework until you strip the uniforms. Malloy and Quinn make crossing passes. One bombs the crest, the other rakes the retarders, and the gentle hill becomes a tumble of wood and steel. Two men in overalls run together, then apart, then vanish into smoke. Feet wet, the channel is pewter. Boxted comes up with runway lamps pricking the haze and flare pots burning like foxfire. Malloy floats the jug in, the gear whining, the brakes whispering heat. Doyle is there again, already counting holes. Inside the ops hut, the map is a mess of colored pins and grease pencil X's. Clarion is a storm painted as geometry. An intelligence sergeant in a sweater reads rail reports in a voice that makes them sound like box scores. Bridges down, yards cut, locomotives disabled. Barge traffic halted due to loss of confidence in bridges. Somewhere in the Reich, a station master sharpens a pencil and realizes there is nothing left to write. Malloy rubs the ridge of his helmet hair and feels the fatigue settle into the bones the way cold settles into tin. On the wall, someone has chalked a big 22 and beneath it, a smaller 23. Tomorrow the hammers fall again. The aces will show where they can. The flak will be everywhere. The jug will carry bombs and rockets and the stubbornness of steel with a job to finish. He steps back into night that smells of oil, frost, and quiet. He pats the armor behind his seat as he climbs the ladder for post-flight checks, an old habit, a superstition he doesn't bother to break. The plate is warm. It has kept its promise again. Section 8. The Ruhr net. Remagen's wake, Ham's knots, and trains with nowhere to go. Previous section text. Continues seamlessly from where this left off. March 25th, 1945. 09:14 hours. North of Ham. The spring haze lays like gauze over the Ruhr, and the air tastes faintly of coal smoke and thawed mud. Malloy's bubble-top P-47D carries two 500-pounders, 8 HVARs, and belts so full the armorers had to lean a knee into the access cover to shut it. Below, the Ham marshalling yard sprawls like a complicated lie. Ladders of track, a roundhouse with teeth knocked out, coal stages, tanks, and switch points that once decided the direction of armies. Angel flight, control. Varsities across, the controller says. Last night they heard gliders whine inland, and this morning the Rhine is a thing men have already stepped over. Ruhr, ring closing. Priority, Ham throat, bridges over the Lippe, and any moving locomotives. Luftwaffe scattered. Flak moderate to heavy. You are cleared all transport targets. Angel copies, Malloy says, easing the jug into a downhill that he's learned to start a touch too gentle. Compressibility waits like a patient uncle. You acknowledge him with trim and he lets you pass. 2 elements high cover the first run. Bombs on the throat. The yard swells in the K-14 like a map zooming. Signal gantries resolve into knitting needles. The first pass is medicine. Pickle. Pickle. 2 black eggs fall in a clean interval, noses down toward switchgear as delicate as a watch. Malloy holds the dive long enough to hand the Brownings 3 disciplined seconds. Rails leap into parentheses, ballast geysers, and a switchman throws himself prone between ties that no longer have a meaning. Quinn's pair walk the opposite ladder. The throat turns into mispronounced grammar. Yard cut, Quinn says, as if calling a score. Flak answers in old voices. A veerling hidden between coal piles slashes orange beads. A disciplined 8.8 down the line guesses their egress and throws black flowers at a sky the color of tin. A 20mm prods a hole through Malloy's port wing with a fist's worth of violence. The jug shudders, shoulders, keeps its vow. The armor plate behind his skull is warm as a hand. Gauges stay boring, and he thanks them with a glance the way you thank a mule for not kicking. Trains still move. Pride makes people do that, even when the map says stop. A black loco shoves 3 flats under tarps toward a low river bridge that never expected to be famous. Lippe span at Datteln. Lentz calls. Moving southbound. Rockets first, Malloy says. pairs, aims short on the near chord. He sets the sight, edges the nose down to the clean angle that puts the spandrel where faith can do the rest, and thumbs the switch. 2 HVARs leave with that angry hiss, flexing like fish finding current, then steady and punch exactly where diagonal meets vertical. Steel cries like a train braking on a bad day. Quinn's pair stitch the far joint. The span sags, embarrassed by physics, and the locomotive breaks into a heap of rails that don't agree on where to be. Bridge cut, Quinn says. Secondary span ahead. They ladder their passes, one with rockets, the other with guns, the third pure contempt with 50 caliber, until the river wears white dust and the bridge has learned a new tense. Used to carry. The flak wagon tucked in a hedgerow finds its voice late. Malloy's answering 3 seconds turn its axle into honest scrap. A boy in a cap runs for a culvert and is hauled down by a man in an armband who once wrote timetables and now learns to pray out of sequence. Angel flight, control. Remagen is still up but strained. Expect columns diverting north. Hit any choke points feeding the bridgeheads. Reports of 109s out of Gütersloh, low fuel, inexperienced. Inexperienced is a lie you tell yourself before someone dies. The first BF-109 appears clean out of the sun, a silver needle with a black cross, and his first burst is too short by a gloved thumb. The second is perfect. Right place, right lead, steady hands. He picks Lentz. Malloy sees it pivot and says, "Into him," because you never give a German the circle he wants. Lentz does, and the 109 flashes by just long enough for Angel 4 to draw a chalk line across his radiator. Coolant sheets white. The Messerschmitt shows its manners, no panic, just a clean break toward a sky that no longer belongs to it. A Focke-Wulf D9 tries to make a name on Quinn. Quinn sinks into ground effect, rides a hedgerow so low the prop wash combs mud into the grass, and then bumps the nose just enough to give his guns a horizon. His burst is a teacher's ruler across a knuckle. The Dora jerks, coughs gray, and leaves the fight with the dignity of an ace who plans to see home again. The Luftwaffe is running on bravery now and grease pencil lines on a wall. They bend west for a canal aqueduct that strides the Ems like a cathedral of rivets. It is big and proud and wrong in the way all bridges are in March. Rockets worry at its joints, bombs argue with its peers. In the mirror, Malloy catches a single parachute and a canopy that never quite settles straight. He doesn't watch it all the way down. Some things you learn not to put in your pocket. Fuel, Quinn says, the metronome. West, Malloy agrees. The Ruhr below them is gears and sand. Columns creep on back roads that end in nothing. Sidings host locomotives that hiss to no timetable. In a field beside a siding, soldiers strip a half-track to its screws with the tenderness of men undoing a coat. Then walk away with their pockets full of bolts and no plan. They cross the Rhine where the pontoons run like a silver zipper, and Remagen sits downriver like a rumor with smoke in it. Boats nose the current. Tanks nose the ramps. A busted truss leans like a tired shoulder and still men cross. The Jugs shadow rips across a barge wake and stitches a quick dark seam in the water. Boxstead in evening light is a mercy. PSP glinting. Flare pots at the strip's end, an ops hut with its door open, and heat bleeding into a line of men who grin because this part of the day keeps proving possible. Malloy lands long and easy, breaks whispering, the armor behind his skull cooling from warm to merely there. Sergeant Doyle meets him at the wing root, rag in one hand, pencil in the other. Grin fixed. "You owe me 3 patches and a new bit of profanity," Doyle says, already bending to the panel, already touching the hurt with a tenderness you only see in mechanics and men who carry stretchers. "Write me a fresh word and I'll learn it," Malloy says, and only then notices how quiet the field is inside the engine's cooling clicks. A kid from B Flight, hums a bar of something that's going to be called peacetime someday. The map on the wall is a net closing. The rails that fed the Reich are a necklace snapped on a dance floor that's run out of music. He pats the armor behind his seat without thinking. It kept its promise again. Tomorrow there will be another yard, another bridge, another river, another boy in a cap who runs the right way. The aces can sneer at Barnes with wings in the journals they won't write. The jug will keep doing its big blunt work until there is nothing left for anyone to move. April 12th, 1945. 07:27 hours, south of Magdeburg. The Elbe runs cold and pewter under a sky the color of an old tin cup, and the land smells of thawed mud, wet timber, and something sweeter underneath. Coal smoke without confidence. Malloy's bubble-top P-47D, dented, patched, temperamental in the way only loyal machines get, carries a workman's load. 2 500-pounders, 8 HVARs, full belts. The briefing board had chalked it plain. Cut approaches to the river, smash railheads at Schönebeck and Barbie, deny crossings, leave the rest for infantry and pontoon men. Angel flight, control. Bridges at Barbie reported wired but standing. Trains westbound on Magdeburg-Leipzig line. Luftwaffe minimal. Expect pairs, not squadrons. The controller says. Voice tight with too many pins on a wall map and a pot of coffee gone into the red. Angel copies, Malloy replies, his glove knuckling the trim in a small, absent-minded prayer. 2 elements high at release. Bombs on the approaches, rockets for the lattice. They ride a shallow step-down through ragged cloud into a morning that's all edges. The Elbe's near bank has tank tracks pressed into wet clay like fingerprints. The rails are a bright, merciless arrow across the fields. A black loco shoulders west with 5 flats, tarps drawn tight as drumheads. A field gray figure leans from the cab and looks up once, a small act of courage that won't change anything. Take the head end, Malloy says. Short bursts. Keep your passes shallow. He nose drops with the restraint of a man who has been told by physics, more than once, what happens when you're greedy. Compressibility waits at 480 like an old creditor. He pays in trim and patience, and the jug lets him steer the debt. Pickle. Pickle. 2 500s jump the shackles, black eggs eager for gravity. He rides down 3 heartbeats more, hands the Browns a disciplined burst, and the yard throat learns new grammar. Rails bow, ballast leaps, a signal mast tilts like a drunk and refuses to stand again. Quinn's bombs take the elsewhere. The exit ladder folds, boxcars unlace, and a roundhouse coughs its bricks onto yesterday. Throat cut, Quinn says, exhaling frost into his mask. Bridge, Lentz calls. Barbie, north approach. The span is steel, lattice long and proud, with concrete abutments that pretend to permanence. Men in field gray skitter ant small along the near bank, feet unsure on mud. A truck idles under poplars, sides slatted, something under tarps that wishes it were far away. Malloy steadies at 800, fights the itch that says now. HVAR rails shiver underwing like impatient dogs. Pairs. Aims short at the lower chord, he says, and his thumb makes it true. 2 rockets leave with a hiss, flex, hunt, decide. They spear the joint where diagonal meets vertical. Steel takes a breath and decides not to exhale. Quinn's pair bite higher, and a square of lattice gives up its shape and swings inward like a broken door. Water throws up a bitter spray. The bridge slumps, not graceful, not heroic, just wrong. Nothing on wheels goes over it today. Span sagging, Quinn reports. Good effects. Flak answer comes late and angry. A veerling hidden in willows needles the air with orange beads. A lone 8.8 on a flatbed throws black flowers at where they were. Malloy rakes the willows, the gun platform lurches, men tumble in mud and lose their caps with ridiculous dignity. The 8.8 gets a pass of contempt. 3 seconds of 50 law that cuts tires, crews, and a cable that snakes off the flatbed like a dead eel. Bandits. Low 2 o'clock. 2 of them, Angel 4 says. Too calm to be new. FDU 190 D9s again, clean as bayonets. They bracket textbook neat. The Luftwaffe is 2 parts bravery and 1 part gasoline now. But a Dora with an ace inside still writes in ink. Break into them. Keep the dive shallow, Malloy says. He meets the first 190 with the Jugs' refusal. A heavy, trimmed curl down into ground effect, where hedgerows become allies and the air thickens enough to give back your hands. The Dora overshoots by a breath. Angel 3 draws a chalk line across its radiator ring, and the sleek nose becomes a shrieking kettle. The German leaves straight and clean, no panic. A white ribbon trails him like a handkerchief. The second 190 commits to Quinn, almost perfect. Quinn slides the Thunderbolt into the hedges, skates the tops. Poplar fluff spins in the prop wash like snow, and then bumps the nose to show the sight a piece of fuselage. His burst is 3 seconds of punctuation. ... across a wing root. The Dora flinches, answers with a short, angry rake that taps Quinn's canopy with gravel sound, and then chooses sky over grave. Discipline saves him where luck would not. Oil? Malloy asks. The ritual. Green, Quinn says. Little love tap on the glass. Nothing that won't polish. They bend south along the line where the last trains run because orders are louder than reason. A loco lunges from a copse with 2 tanker cars like sins behind it. Priority, Malloy says, and the word tastes like gasoline. His rockets walk the ballast short, then step into the first tanker. It lifts its shell like a turtle whose back just learned fire, and the world turns orange. He feels the heat on his cheeks through the mask, a wave that pats the Jug's belly and lets it pass. Angel Flight Control. Reports. Bridges at Zerbst and Aachen down. Heavy traffic on roads north of Dessau. You are cleared those choke points. Intelligence notes. Civilians on move, mixed with military. Copy civilians, Malloy says. We take what feeds guns. The road is the color of resignation. A staff car flees under an avenue of linden. Curtains drawn. A horse-drawn wagon creaks, children's heads haloed by sunlight. A truck wears a tarpaulin with a red cross painted clumsy and unconvincing. In the middle of it, a flak veerling hides its teeth under straw until the barrel mouths peak like snakes. Malloy hits the gun only. 2 seconds. Precise. No spill. The wagon leaps apart in straw and splinters. The horses bolt blessedly. He leaves the car, leaves the wagon with kids. You take arteries, not hearts. Fuel says turn. Habit agrees. The Jug's engine settles into a homeward sermon. The armor behind his head warms with a small, familial comfort. The Elbe slides away. A blown span on the near bank leans into water like a man who wants to sit and finally does. In the distance, a column of smoke climbs and folds on itself. It could be a yard, a bridge, a town. It could be the last train that tried. Boxstead wears afternoon like a coat it forgot it owned. Sun on PSP. A wind that smells of oil and cut grass. Malloy kisses the mains, lets the tail come down with a familiar thump. On the line, Sergeant Doyle has the look of a man who has already cut patches by eye. He climbs the wing with a rag in his pocket and a rye. Brought you back again, did she? He says, palm finding the armor's new bruise. She always does. Malloy answers, tapping the plate with 2 knuckles the way you'd thank a stubborn friend. Rails? He asks, not needing the answer. Running out of them, Doyle says. Gaze skimming east as if he can see all the way to Magdeburg. Running out of men to guard him, too. Malloy looks past hangars to a wall map that used to be complicated and now is only inevitable. The Reich's railways were arteries. Today they are scabs. A year ago, the aces sneered at barns with wings. Today the barns wear teeth, and the trains have nowhere left to go. May 3rd, 1945. 08, 11 hours. East of Lübeck, the Baltic is a sheet of hammered pewter, and the morning smells of sea salt, wet pine, and a war bleeding out. Malloy's bubble-top Thunderbolt levels at 5,000 feet with a light load. No bombs, only full gun belts and a pair of drop tanks that slosh like quiet reminders. The briefing had been strange. Armed reconnaissance with the emphasis on observe. A line of retreat is snaking toward the coast. Bridges already lie wrong. Trains are rumors that end in smoke and silence. There are still columns, still flak guns rolled out of barns like stubborn heirlooms, still the occasional pair of fighters with a fuel drum's worth of intent. But the map has changed. The rails are no longer lines. They are scars. Angel flight control, the controller says. Voice gentled by exhaustion and proximity to an end. Harbor approaches priority. Railheads at Bad Kleinen and Schönberg are cold. Report only on civilian movements. Engage only armed columns or active flak. Luftwaffe activity sporadic. Last night a single 109 over Wismar, no effect. Malloy glances at Quinn. A silhouette under plexiglass, as familiar as his own hands. Copy, he says. He would not have believed a year ago that he'd be told to look more than to break. He would not have believed a year ago that a marshalling yard could feel like an empty stage after the play closes. They slide south of Lübeck and the rails unravel into dead ends. Boxcars sit door open, emptiness yawning. A turntable has frozen mid-gesture, a patient hand suspended. A child in a gray sweater pedals a bicycle along a cinder path, peers up once, and keeps going because the thunder now means a different kind of tomorrow. The roundhouse at Schönberg wears a recent wound, bombed brick like a missing tooth. But it's silent. No soot ghosts lifting from its throat. No switchman's arm describing arcs of authority. The P-47s pace the lines like shepherd dogs who find no flock. Road traffic northbound. Lentz reports. Mixed. Carts, trucks, some troops. He does not say the other thing they all see. Women walking, kids on wagon tails, bundles tied with string. War spills its contents. Hold fire unless it bites, Malloy says, and they range ahead. At a crossroads, a veerling lurks under a chestnut and keeps its temper, barrels depressed. The men around it hold their hands up, not waving, not surrendering, just letting the air see their emptiness. It is a new language. Along the verge, a Wehrmacht corporal with a bandage under his cap points the column toward the coast with a gesture that means both go and forgive me. The Jugs' shadow skims his boots, and he doesn't flinch. They bank toward Bad Kleinen and find what remains of a railhead. 2 locomotives uncoupled and off steam, a table of station ledgers thrown to the floor like leaves. A stray horse noses at a sack of coal. Malloy's instinct is to count targets, angles, egress points. His hands relax on the stick when there is nothing left to count. Angel flight, control. Be advised. White flags reported in multiple towns. Confirmed surrender talks at Rems pending. Maintain discipline. You are to avoid populated areas unless fired upon. The voice has the careful distance of a man whispering near sleeping children. Their last bite of flak finds them northwest of Ratzeburg. 3 clean bursts from a 20mm crew with more stubbornness than sense. The tracers sketch a neat ladder and climb toward Quinn. Malloy angles, gives the crew 2 seconds of persuasion into the dirt by their wheels, and holds his fire as the guns fall silent and hands lift again into the new, strange air. One of the Germans takes off his cap and holds it in both hands like a basin. Then, inevitable, almost ceremonial, the last pair of fighters. Bandits, high 11, Quinn says, not quite believing the word as it leaves his mouth. Two BF-109Gs, silver gray, black crosses crisp, noses clean as if for inspection. They come down in a measured bracket with an ace's handwriting. They could be ghosts who haven't been told the play is over. Break into them, shallow, Malloy says, and the Jug answers with the ease of ritual. The first one-eye picks the wide arc. He is careful and late. Angel 4 gives him a neat stitch across the spinner and into the radiator. A white ribbon unspools behind the Messerschmitt, and the pilot, disciplined as a rule book, levels, holds his glide, and pops his canopy. The second 109 slides toward Malloy with a kind of reluctant grace. Cannon blink. One round taps the armor behind Malloy's head with a sound like a coin struck on a church bell. The plate grows warm, familiar. Malloy's burst is short, polite, a stern note written across the German's wing route. The 109 breaks and holds away, then waggles once, slow, unmistakable, and peels east. It is not a trick. It is goodbye. They orbit the line to Wismar because that is what the paper says, and paper still matters for a few hours more. On the tracks, a last locomotive sits with its rods frozen at quarter, handbrake set, all its pressure bled into yesterday. The station clock has lost its hands. A woman in a dark dress pins a white sheet to a fence. The wind snaps it open like a sail. A boy waves because planes always deserved a wave. Angel control. The radio murmurs, suddenly human. Word is what you think it is. Hold your sectors. Finish nothing you don't have to. Down by the harbor, barges loaf at their moorings, ropes slack. A gull rides the slipstream and scolds them like a local. Malloy rolls level, and for the first time in months, the horizon looks like something other than a task. Bring it home, he says, and the flight turns for Boxted with the casual honesty of men who have earned the right to use less throttle. The field greets them with dandelions along the PSP seams and fuel bowsers that move, as if their drivers aren't counting seconds anymore. Malloy lands long and straight, brakes whispering. He taxis past the dispersals where Jugs sit with their canopies open like yawning lions. The engines click as they cool. The smell is oil and iron and success. Sergeant Doyle climbs the wing with his familiar rag and pencil. He runs a thumb over a fresh crater in the armor plate and makes that low, appreciative sound. She took another sermon for you, he says. Plate says, Amen. Malloy pops the harness, stands in the cockpit, and looks east. In the shirt pocket of his A2 is a folded strip of printed German timetable, rescued from a yard office months ago. Halle, Leipzig, Bitterfeld, Magdeburg. He had kept it not as a trophy, but as a vow. Now its lines mean nothing. The rails it promised are broken, or paved over, or turned to museum pieces that school children will climb on and ask, how fast did trains go then? He passes the timetable to Doyle. Hang it on the shop wall, he says, under the dent. Which dent? Doyle asks, eyes crinkling. Pick any, Malloy says, and smiles in a way that feels new. That night, the ops hut is quiet. Maps stay rolled. Pins sleep in cork. A few men sit with tea they don't drink and books they don't turn. Someone draws a jug on a chalkboard. Big nose, big wing, guns all across, and writes, too big to kill. Under it, he adds in small, neat letters, and just right to end it. Malloy steps back into the cool air and walks the perimeter to his ship. He rests a palm on the armor behind the seat, feeling the day's warmth lingering in the steel. You can tell yourself stories about luck or skill or fate. But sometimes a promise is made of metal, and sometimes a machine keeps it. He looks toward the dark horizon where rails used to shine like commandments. The aces who sneered will sign forms tomorrow, and the trains they defended won't arrive. Bridges will stay wrong for a while, then be right again for children who never learned to read maps by flak and smoke. The Jug, barn big, anvil tough, patient as gravity, did what it came to do. Soak cannon fire, dive like a thrown safe, and ruin the Reich's railways until the whole timetable fell off the wall. He pats the plate once. 2 knuckles. Old habit. Good work, he says. To the machine, to the men, to the map that is finally out of arguments.